Oh, I think I got the best part of the lo-fi right there. Hello everyone, this is your friend Carlz with another week of comic books. I apologize in advance if any extreme sound can be heard from outside my window. It's hot as hell still, and I don't have a fancy studio with AC and anything. And also, I was hella late because I had to deal with people from the internet, That's how it goes. But as long as you keep smiling and a positive attitude, I think nothing can bring you down. Like you have your cup of tea, you have your comics, it's nothing that terrible. But anyways, this week there's not a big news because we all knew about it, but as I'm gonna start playing right now, DC launched these fancy trailers they like to do now for the new phase or the all-in initiative. And I'm taking this moment and this space for news to talk about DC's kind of like publicity management they have been doing. I think they've honestly been killing it with it. It's like, I don't know how can you say it? Like, it's so strange because we know that these jumping points are never as such. Like, if you follow comics for like the past 20 years, these jumping points are really manufactured and manipulated. And of course they say from the ashes of KO or whatever, right? They try to make it sound that it has some continuity or that is something really like new when it's not. We know the cycle of comics. They bring a new guy, they bring a new team, they write a character that might not be, being talked about in a long time. You bring your A games if you want something like really stand off. I talked about the initiative before, right? Like months ago. And for some reason it works, even if you know all of this. Instead of like looking at these cold ass solicitations like this title is coming written by, just do a nice trailer video and you will catch people attention. It's undoubtedly KO is coming to an end, and we already know I don't want to spoil anymore. We're like right on the brink on it, but like Batman is back, Superman is going through shit, so the KO event is gonna end in a great way. And that is something that DC, as I've said many times, they just do better than Marvel, having continuity amongst their events and make their events mean something. So it's a perfect jumping point for for the all-in initiative, for take it to the next level. Me personally, I just wanna read new stories about characters with authors that I like Batwoman with Greg Rucka. I love Greg Rucka. And Batwoman is a character that they did this team up with Luke Fox. What was it called? Like The Outsiders or something. I want main stage for some of these characters. But especially Batwoman and Barbara Gordon Breakout. I don't know what's gonna happen with Barbara Gordon Breakout, but that's also a character that has been like pushed into a second level, right? Or like to the back. You go to the back of the room and like do support for Nightwing for like what has been a couple of years maybe by now. So that is the big news of the week. Does a trailer count as new? I don't know. But KO is on point. They brought the absolute heroes from the absolute universe to this place. Like Darkseid is back. DC just knows how to do events. They just know. I think like universe and imprint wise, that could probably be their biggest kind of like asset or like the best thing they do. Like Lobo by Scotty Young and Jorge Corona, man. Like you don't need to know anything. Like I don't even like Lobo. Just gonna say I'm not a fan of Lobo. But Scotty Young, that I talk about him a lot, and Jorge Corona, I mentioned him a couple of times as well. Like all you need is that. So let's hope they bring interesting titles. But even more interesting about whatever the titles are gonna be about, it's gonna be the end of KO. And holding on to that, we better go to this week's comics. I said that I was gonna talk about all the Vertigo releases, and this is new, The Peril of the Brutal Dark. And I'm just gonna straight up and say it. The cover, the topic about a detective solving cases with a trench coat. You know, what does it look like? What does it look like? What does that cover look like? You're thinking it, I'm thinking it. It looks like John Constantine. But it's not John Constantine, it's Ezra Kane. So I think detective and kind of like investigative thriller types are like kind of like an ideal Vertigo title. So just some detective, like by the looks of him, he is kind of like on that side of wiki of wacky detectives. Like they don't have their shit together. So like, oh, I'm going into this private eye business. I don't know, man. I think I've said it before. I think as well, thrillers are this weird balance genre where you either like nailed it or just make it so fucking boring. You know, Chris Condon, the author, the most recent thing I read from him is Ultimate Wolverine, and I wasn't particularly a fan of Ultimate Wolverine. It kind of like went all over. It didn't felt focused, which cannot happen in a thriller. In a thriller, you have a case, a mystery that to solve. That is your main shit. So, another Vertigo title I read last week, I think a couple of days ago, the first issue of Bleeding Hearts, and it had a Vertigo vibe. It had a Vertigo vibe, of course. As I said before during the episode where I mentioned it, is a zombie story where a zombie sort of regains his humanity in a way. But they did it in this really clever, layered sort of narrative where the zombie, the main character, gets back his humanity, but in a really strange way, because zombies in that universe are already kind of people. They have personhood, basically. They seem to have not intellect, but they seem to have some sort of rationality. So when you add all of those layers, I'll kind of like a quote-unquote alive zombie, or like a human zombie, or like a zombie with feelings, it gets a whole another vibe. So they nailed it. The art is cartoonish and cute, so they can tackle on these subjects with darkness, but at the same time with charisma, which is the Vertigo way. So the Peril of the Brutal Dark, whatever's next from Vertigo, count me in. He looks like John Constantine. As I'm looking at my John Constantine statue, I'm like, man. Man, I wish they could bring back Constantine to be what he was before. Now he's doomed to be this wizard. I never saw him as a wizard or as a magician. I just saw him like as a hustle guy. He just went by like hustling demons and angels. And what is life if not a bunch of us just hustling? Unless you have some inheritance from your rich parents. Fuck it. Next. So we're finally here, the Amazing Spider-Man and Venom Death Spiral. In the previous issue of Venom, we saw briefly the return of Eddie Brock. We talked about a little bit about the short-lived Carnage book, which apparently was cancelled. I didn't even know it was cancelled, but apparently it was cancelled, probably because it wasn't that good. I thought, even though I saw some good in it, but it was all coming towards to this, the new event in the Spider-Man kind of like, what is Spider-Man doing this week? And the Spider-Man symbiote kind of like saga. I've tried to read not so much about it, so I don't know how this is gonna coordinate with whatever is happening with Null and the Queen in Dark. I'm Queen in Black, sorry. I'm not sure, but we have the setup with the Venom symbiote and the Carnage symbiote to deal with this new assassin, like serial killer, who happens to have this spiral thing, which is the symbol of Null and the symbiotes. I don't know, man. I think the best thing about the Dead Spiral event right now is that I have no idea where they're going with it. The past 5 years, we have seen so much shit from Venom, from Carnage. The symbiote have had their story and their background change so much in the past 5 to 6 years that, frankly, honestly, I don't even know what they could be aiming now with Dead Spiral. Of course, the publicity of it's making a big deal of it, like life-changing story for the symbiotes or whatever. But in your mind, if you've been following these characters for the past 10 years, as I said, you have had Eddie becoming God, Null appearing and going away, Carnage gaining independence and then breaking through. Like, he was his own guy for a bit, then he consumed Cletus at one point. Like, now Venom is with Dylan's, with Eddie's son, but now he's with MJ. Like, you have all the other symbiotes, Toxin, and like it's a shit show. A fun shit show at least, but a shit show nonetheless. So if you can really predict what this is going to be without reading too much of the previews, well, I congratulate you. But me, I'm just going clean and pretty excited. Coming out from an amazing run in Amazing Spider-Man and in a great run in Venom, despite the criticism, and a quite interesting run with Carnage. I think the symbiotes are fun. You know, after the whole Eddie Brock becoming the god of the symbiotes or whatever, and that run was interesting, but like, from like the big picture, it wasn't that big, or I mean that good of a run, because it sort of implied to change so many things in the symbiote lore, but in the end nothing happened. So, Spider-Man Venom Dead Spiral, issue number 1. Next. I said that I was talking about I began the show with talking about the whole KO initiative. In Justice League Unlimited, one of the longest running tie-ins for the DC KO event, we saw Mr. Terrific coming, like, banding together a bunch of heroes from different parts of the multiverse and coming to face the gods or whatever. You know, what I wanted to say about this series and what I thought it was rather interesting was that it sort of let you know that these characters, they always have potential. These are like secondary characters, most of them, and they have the potential to participate in these sort of parallel events to whatever is happening in the main thing. And what I liked about this book is how mid it is. I think one of the previous times I mentioned it was because the press release said, like, life-changing, what character is gonna die. So basically Superman lost something really important. One of the Supermans. Superman lost a part of his identity, which is, like, thematically, maybe philosophically super interesting, but in the terms of the book and in the terms of long-term DC universal effects, like, it doesn't matter at all. It's just one other of the many Supermans having. But the point is, they use it to make commentary on the base idealism of many of these characters. Even if they're secondary, even they can just leave on the side, and whatever happened in this event wasn't really that important for KO as a whole, as an event. So in the end, it was just okay. But as KO is ending, you sort of look behind to the tie-ins and whatever, like Night Fight and all of that stuff that was good. And the other day I was remember how there was also tie-in with the Flash, which I had completely forgotten about it. It was really funny. But anyways, another okay tie-in for the DC KO event. Noteworthy, yeah, sufficient enough. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst, but it was right in the middle in interesting characters, potential development, and kind of like relevant arguments inside a story to the main event, you know. But now that All In is coming to an end, you might as well be at least mildly aware of what every character is doing. In this case, to me, is Batman Beyond. I always love Batman Beyond, the character, and I think the current title with Static Shock is not that interesting. Not because of Static Shock or Batman themselves, but they have been following a timeline for Batman Beyond in previous books that I was hoping they would follow through, but it seems that it doesn't matter. You know, Justice League Unlimited. Next. So we've come to the one of the this. Wait, was the Phantom of the Opera a universal monster? I wasn't even that sure that the Phantom of the Opera was a universal monster. But anyways, we've come to another Image comic adaptation of one of the universal monsters, in this case the Phantom of the Opera, one of the fan favorite of all time, man. Like, he's no Frankenstein, he's no Dracula, but the Phantom of the Opera has always been a really interesting character. The thing about the Universal Monsters series of books that they have released in Image and why they are so good is that they know they are not just doing the same story. They have put a little spin in all of them, some of them more than others. For example, in the Monster from the Balak Lagoon, the monster wasn't the main highlight or the main focus of the book. It was the survivor, which sort of happens in many of the other stories, but they just mix it up a little bit. The monster is rarely in it. Or like when they did Dracula, it was a little bit told from a third party kind of like point of view, you can say. Yeah, point of view, like a witness story, which was the spirit of the original novel by Bram Stoker, right? It was a retelling or somebody telling you the story, not the protagonist, which we have often forgotten on all of the ages and the versions and the infinite adaptations we've seen from Dracula. So they have all been interesting, even though they have kept the original kind of like emotion of it. And Phantom of the Opera is one of those, because Phantom of the Opera, the best thing about the Phantom of the Opera has always been that the Phantom of the Opera is not precisely a bad guy. It's a story about love, about tragedy, about trauma, about discrimination, you know. Like, it has so many layers, but they all go through the fact that the Phantom of the Opera, the main character himself, is not just a bad guy. There are subtleties in that story, and I'm looking forward to see what they're gonna do with it. You know, as I said, they have intentionally done so with all of these Universal Monsters books. Let's just take the focus a little bit to the side, or like, let's just push it a little bit more to this other character. Let's do something like that, like something creative. Plus, it has Martin Simmons, from the Department of Truth, like the illustrator from the Department of Truth. So we're gonna have this constant dream-like kind of like visuals for it. They did overdo it a little bit for Dracula as well. I think they kind of like depended a little bit too much on that vibe. But anyways, let's see what is the new twist they're gonna have for the Phantom of the Opera, one of the the most classic stories ever told, part of the Universal Monsters. I myself, I'm like singing for it. Sing for me, you bastard. Next. Recently I talked about Predator Badlands and how funny it was. Not funny, but how curious it was to think about it, and how it completely changes the paradigm of the character of the Yautja, the Predators. And I said that I'm looking forward to see what's next for the characters. I'm looking forward to see, and I couldn't go back and just see another Yautja as a generic slasher monster. So this new miniseries based on the Predator franchise by Marvel, Predator Bloodshed, is it gonna be like that or not? I've been kind of like passively reading most of the 20th Century Fox books in Marvel, Alien and Predator mostly. They've all had some interesting developments here and there, something curious, something funny. They all had some of it, but the main reason why I'm picking up Predator Bloodshed after I talk about Badlands is to remind myself of this contrast that I was talking about. Like, I don't think that everybody that is allowed to work with the Predator brand are like completely in sync, which means what I mean by that is like I don't think the people that work in Predator Bloodshed were necessarily told to recognize whatever happened in Badlands, or like to already start making changes in the Yausha as a character, you know. So it's just basically that. I'm just gonna check it out and sort of understand more of my own proposed contrast as part of the character. Like, just gonna see it in action, because I doubt it's gonna be as culturally relevant as what we saw in Badlands. A curiosity pick for this week, why not? Predator Bloodshed. Yeah, I was gonna say Predator Bullshit. Number 1. Next. Another number 1? So soon? Well, that's how it goes. I've been saying about all of these Punisher books that they have all fall flat, but they have all fall flat for the one reason and the one reason only, that the previous big volume of the Punisher was too good. That's it. He was not a god, but he was kind of like the Jesus of assassins. You know, he's the these infamous Punisher bylaws or principles, right? Like, and all criminals are doomed to die. Like, I'm gonna punish all of them. It got taken to the extreme. It had the Punisher ethos as part of it. It had a lot of lore for the League of Assassins and what is it? Not the Hand. Like, it had so much lore, and then it had an ending that was so relevant for the character. Maria Castle, his wife, was back. Not only that, this is a spoiler for that volume. Should I say it? Fuck it, I'm gonna say it. She was pregnant. She was fucking pregnant. She was alive and pregnant. So let's take what made the Punisher the Punisher. Let's take it out. You know, when people say like, yeah, you could never like have Bruce Wayne's parents come back, or like you could never have Uncle Ben revive, and super low key, the reason for the Punisher to become the Punisher was the murder of his family was taken away in the main Punisher books. Hello, Mr. Truck. In the main Punisher books, we saw that changing. So we have another number 1 for Punisher, this time brought by Benjamin Percy and Jose Luis Solares Pinto. And come on, man. For what I read about the press release, they go like, oh, Jigsaw is back, you know. Whenever they do that, they bring kind of like one of the more important or relevant nemesis or like bad guys from a character. It's like, yeah, he's gonna fight the main guy again. Like, that is not what we wanna see. Like, yeah, Frank doesn't have memory. Like, fuck it. Like, that is not what we wanna see. You know, that is not what we wanna see. Why does this? Well, am I gonna say he's B tier? Yeah, Punisher is a B tier character. No Spider-Man, no Iron Man. Why do these B tier characters don't have the same treatment of continuity as the big ones does? You have this big Punisher book. You have it being super successful. You have a bunch of people interested in it. It gains like recognition, maybe some awards. People love it. And why do you cut it off? You wouldn't do that with fucking Spider-Man, like Iron Man, Captain America. You wouldn't do that with an A tier list Marvel hero. So it's really fucked up that they do it with Punisher. And since that story ended a couple of years ago, I think by now, what happened with it? You can't just keep this kind of like a wild card. The fact that his wife is alive and she's pregnant, you can just keep that on the back burner until you need it. I mean, you can, they're probably doing that, but if you ask we the consumers to forget about it, I don't know, man. I don't know. If someone can do it, like, props, congratulations. You can do something that I cannot. To me, I've never been that much of a fan of the Punisher, but that story was so good. You know, as I said, it has so much drama, it has so much action, it has so much lore. It was so relevant to the ethos of the character that it just pisses me off that it's being brushed away. And just, will this new Punisher #1 pick up after that? I don't know. At least from what we can tell from the press release, not necessarily. So we'll see. Punisher #1. Next. Just another Superman. This is really strange because I don't really want to spoil KO, but let's just say, how can you put this without spoilers? Let's say one character was up and the other was down, and then they change it. You know, I'm not gonna say which character did what or which character was up and then is down. I'm not gonna do that sort of spoiler. But the commentary here and the relevancy on Superman is that he is completely attached to the, what is his name of this doomsday time traveler, time trapper or something. I keep forgetting the name of this version of Doomsday. But the point is, at the beginning of KO, I thought Superman was gonna be the main guy. And he was for a long time, and it's not that he's not now. look at me tiptoeing like through like shards of glass and spoilers. But the thing is, the whole balance of the event has been changed in just the last issue of KO. And whatever we thought Superman was going to do, if he's gonna do it now under these new circumstances, I have no idea how is he gonna do that. You know, the whole landscape of the event changed last time, and it's super interesting. It's in a really exciting point, and I think I've said this for different books, but all the pieces are in place. Whatever it is gonna happen after this, it's completely unexpected. You know, because you remember Batman at the beginning of the event, he was out of the tournament, then he was back in, and like how was he in? Who won? Man, this is too many elements that have been moving in like light speed between a couple of important tie-ins and the main book for KO. Like, this is just a bunch of pieces moving way too fast, doing so many things. But I'm not gonna recommend all of them, just Superman, because I was looking at Superman at the beginning and I'm gonna look at Superman at the end. So Superman, a part of it's funny to say now it's a tie-in, considering he was such a big part of the event. That I'm not saying that he's not. Superman, another DC KO tie-in. Next. Speaking of events ending, a couple of days ago, I finally read the final issue of Ultimate Spider-Man. It was quite a journey, and the final issue of Ultimate Spider-Man was exactly what anyone with like basic sense would have expected it to be. Like, literally to the point. It's like surprises, changes. No, it ended basically how we came to love Ultimate Spider-Man, which, as I've said before, it was this concentrated dose of what made Spider-Man great. Now, there's one thing about Ultimate Spider-Man, the last issue, that is really important that I'm not gonna spoil, but as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, with the whole you can't change the no, it wasn't at the end, it was with Punisher. Like, you can't change like the main motivations of a character. Like, you can't bring Uncle Ben alive. In the final issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, they didn't bring back Uncle Ben because he's alive in that universe, for starters. But they did that, or something similar, from a theoretical point of view, from an argumental point of view. And that was basically the most brilliant part of the whole Ultimate Spider-Man experience, because it sort of proved what we thought was going on, this concentrated Spider-Man idea. Then they gifted you this concentrated Spider-Man idea, but since the beginning was so different, the conclusions are different as well. So if Ultimate Spider-Man is to come back, he is a new Spider-Man, officially, just by changing a couple of ideas in the character. But this is the Ultimate, which is, we are almost done with it. And why am I recommending the Ultimate? Not only because I'm hyped with whatever the Ultimate Universe is coming to an end, as I said, I was really excited with Ultimate Spider-Man, not so much with Ultimate Black Panther, that didn't hit it off too much for me, but in Ultimate issue 21, we're gonna see featured Ultimate Luke Cage. And dude, Luke Cage is one of the best characters in Marvel. He's been so for, what, 10-15 years by now, and I was looking so much forward to see Ultimate Luke Cage have a spotlight. It's really late in the game, it is, but like, he's leading the Ultimate Avengers and he looks so fucking badass. And apparently he's still gonna have that Ultimate vibe, which is having this, as I said many times by now, that concentrated kind of like dose of whatever made the character great, just a concentrated dose of him. And we're gonna get it in Ultimate Luke Cage in the Ultimate issue 21, as a leader, as a inspiration. In Ultimate, he like basically never left prison. If we remember the main Luke Cage from the main Marvel Comics universe, he was in prison. It's part of the character's origins, but here he never left prison. So we can see whatever makes Luke Cage a great character and an awesome person in a different light, an enhanced light, or the light of someone that, as I said, never left prison. Looks awesome. The design is incredible. The setup is perfect. It's sad that it's not gonna be a longer. We won't be spending longer time with him, since the Ultimates and this current Ultimate Universe is almost over. So it's sad, but we're gonna get something, and I'm super excited. Look at him, man. He looks fucking badass, man. Okay, next, last, and the book of the week. Disney Villains it's been one of my favorite series of the past years, and you know, I often listen to the Villains songbook. There's one of the albums from Disney that only has the villain songs. Disney villains are these weird, strange, rather, how can you say, creation, because they sort of imply more layers that they could ever show in the movies. That is the main thing. Like, these characters ain't shallow. If anyone has listened to, like, way when I began recording again, I talk about no, it's not Encanto. What is the name? Wish, one of the Disney's latest animated movies. And I talk about how the main character, I don't remember the character name, but he was played by by Chris Pine, right? I remember talking about how frustrating it was that in that movie itself, they sort of tiptoed even closer to making a full-on character of the main villain. How there were many ideas and like theories and positions that they were shown through the movie's plot that had so much potential to create a more layered and interesting villain. That was basically the most frustrating issue, or like the most frustrating problem with Wish. It was that it had potential to be something that ended up not doing, because it had to regress into Disney tropes, all tropes, into Disney tropes, into the main character, into the heroes. Well, all of that have been somewhat satisfied with the series of Disney villains by Dynamite Comics. It's about giving these characters the attention they deserve. And out of all of those characters, I'm not gonna say Ursula is kind of like the best or the one with most potential. I don't know. One of the things we saw in the live action Little Mermaid that we didn't see so much in the animated version was a little bit of Ursula's backstory. I think Ursula sort of falls back way more quickly than some other of the Disney villains into just being the bad witch and everything. So we're gonna dive deep into what turned her into what she is. You know, I remember some scenes with what's her name, the actress that portrayed Ursula in the movies, McCarthy, right? And her trying to give some levity and like some emotional impact to Ursula's never fully explained backstory. And we're gonna see it. Like the setup is perfect because unlike, for example, Maleficent, a book that I've been enjoying a lot, Maleficent is all about, well, adding layers to the character. It really isn't like changing it too much. And I'm not saying I want Ursula to be changed, but the fact that it doesn't change the character, it just give it more kind of like weight. In this case, magical weight. In the case of Maleficent, but in the case of Ursula, whatever weight, no pun intended, the character is gonna get, it's totally related to a deeply troublesome and dark backstory. And I think that is the biggest kind of like, not a weakness, but kind of like the thing that you need to tread carefully when you talk about villains in stories like this, because you want to understand them. You want them to be more layered. You want them to be more something that you can be empathic about. Empathic? I think I've searched this word before, but I forgot about it. To have empathy for someone. But you can't do it too much, because then you get into subjects and problems that you don't want to talk about with kids. And as I said before, that was the main issue with the main villain in Witch as well. At the moment you need to explain to a kid how life is not simple, how villains are not just bad guys, the moment you have to justify quote unquote evil, or where you need to explain quote unquote bad deeds, you get into a problem that is hard to deal with kids. You know, because the world has never been black and white, and we don't necessarily teach kids that the world is black and white, but they just don't have the rational and emotional capacity to understand that the world is gray. So it's always easier to think about these characters, these bad guys, as black and white situations, but it never is. So it's good that they are using this niche area of comics to embrace this grayness in these characters. In the end of the day, we're not making them heroes, or we're not making them like I don't know. Well, they are the main characters in these books, but we are turning them into people basically. We need to understand that all of these individuals are people one way or another, because since they were created by people, and since they are a reflection of our society and our sort of human culture, they can't be outliers. We can't just go around and say like, yeah, bad guys are this freak of nature that happens sometimes in like this weird like situation that has nothing to fucking do with me. They can go be villains over there, and we are all heroes here. Like, fuck, that is one of the biggest lies we like to tell ourselves, and we like to tell the next generations. That villains, psychopaths, murderers, they are like all liars. They are like sociopaths. You can have a sociopath without a society. You can have an outlier or an exception without a norm. You know? So it's great that they're using this platform to do a little bit of layer up for these characters. And me personally, I'm really looking forward for Ursula, because not because she's interesting or anything, but I get this strong feeling. I've always gotten this strong feeling from The Little Mermaid that they just brush her out so quickly. I think in the live action movie they imply that she was Triton's sister, right? Right? Like the king, and like, I don't fucking remember, man. But whatever. That is the book of the week. Disney Villains Ursula. Looking forward to it. And that's another week of comic books. A lot of shit. Fortunately, I'm a little bit more kind of like up to date. I do have, I mean, I'm always kind of like a week behind. I have a bunch of shit and interesting shit. I'm looking to my to-do list. Oh, I have the new Wolverine book on hold. Man, both Wolverine books. Spider-Man. I really want to talk about the new Iron Man, but frankly, issue number 1 was basically like the most introduction you can have, like, ever. I have the new Absolute Batman, the other Vertigo book. Man, you look at this, like, you look at your to read and to, can you say, like, to check. You have so much shit to read. Like, I don't know, man. Whatever. Why do I... Fuck it. Oh, I have the new Smile book as well. Whatever. Let's leave it at that. And maybe give ourselves some time to go read some of this stuff. Hopefully everyone can have an amazing week. You can, if you're not reading comics, maybe read your books. I'm still reading Lord of the Rings. I read it every year. And, like, you know, find something to enjoy, to share, and, well, to enjoy again. You enjoy it, you share it, and if the joy was joyful enough, the sharing will bring you more joy. That is a math that no one can rebuke. That's a word, right? Yeah. See you all next week. Bye bye.